Hello, Michael.
How are you, Martin?
I'm good. What about you?
So when we do it this way, right, in studio, actually, where is this studio, by the way?
We are at 7 Pitch right now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's great.
You know what's kind of funny, though? Sometimes when I'm talking about the studio here, I say Twin Peaks.
Twin Pitch?
I just don't know why. And I never saw that show when it was on, ever.
Okay.
So I shouldn't even have a reference for it, but I know it's a thing that exists. But 7 Peaks.
7 Pitch, yeah.
I should have worn my T-shirt today.
Yeah, you should. You do something.
I normally wear it.
Yeah, you do normally.
And it's Friday. Anyway, we're not going to go for the French thing. I hate this so much.
Oh, that's right.
I can't even begin to explain this.
All of our guests can speak French, Mike.
No, but how come when I walk over to the table, the English guy, we'll get to Stephen in a minute, he's sitting there. I think it's just to get to me this time.
No,
did you tell him? You told him, didn't you?
Actually, I did not know he could speak French. But
you definitely did.
When I walked in, he started to say to me like "Bonjour, comment ça va?" And I was like, "Can you speak French?" Like, yeah, of course. I can. Bien sûr, je peux parler français.
Bien sûr.
And then I was like, "Oh, Michael is gonna like it." Just once again, Michael, you need to learn French.
What are you going to do when I come back into the studio in a year and the whole thing's in French?
That would be great.
I'm going to be like the biggest content creator in France.
Yes, and you don't speak French.
Oh, no, I will speak French.
Oh, perfect.
Should we welcome Stephen?
Yeah, let's do it.
Stephen Inscoe, right? A co-founder. He's got a fancy title. And the CIO, not Chief Investment Officer, depending. The Chief Information Officer at BlueSleep. I like this name.
That's pretty cool.
It's kind of a cool name, don't you think?
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, Stephen, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's nice to be here.
Why were you doing that French thing anyway?
Well, Martin and I the last time spoke in English, and I thought it was more polite this time to go into French.
But are you, what is it called? Are you one of these guys that just speaks multiple languages with pleasure? Do you know what I mean? And that it's something that you just love to do?
I speak a few languages, and I've found in the work that I've done, which has been through quite a few countries, that one of the better ways of trying to understand and do research and understand people and cultures is to at least make some kind of effort at learning the language.
I could not agree with you more. I want to get into your background a little bit in a second, but before we do that, I want to reiterate this to people. In my mind, and you tell me just based on your experience, right? I feel like culture is embedded in language and food.
Yep.
So if you go to a country, and where do you live now most of the time?
In Moscow.
So you live in Moscow, right? So if you can speak Russian, let me back up for a second. So if you go into like just a regular Russian restaurant with somebody from out of town, out of the country, and you say, hey, let's have this kind of Russian food. And they're like, oh, I don't eat that thing. At some point in your mind, it has to trigger, okay, this person's going to have a problem here because they'll never be able to understand the Russian mentality for business if they can't eat the food and if they're not willing to try. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I'd also add to the language and the food, I'd add literature. You know, I think that there's an awful lot in literature.
Sure.
It also goes into sort of the natural psyche or whatever. But I think when, again, backing up again, my job is a lot of research.
Right.
I think in trying to research, there's only so much that you can collect, whether it's online or whether it's in printed publications. And there's inevitably a leap into instinct and trying to make best guesses. And I think the closer that you can get to the culture or the mentality of the people you're trying to understand, whether it's in e-commerce or other fields, the closer that you'll get to getting that guess right.
Well, you were saying this to Martin earlier. You can really tell if somebody understands French if they can read, I forget what the name of the thing was.
Le canard enchaîné.
Right, but you say it with a smile, but you probably really mean it, because to me, the literature is like an embodiment, it's like a derivative embodiment of the culture.
Yep.
It's here I am explaining to you in a normal day-to-day love story, hate story, murder story, whatever it is.
Or humor.
Or humor, whatever it is,
humor.
About the culture.
Yep.
And this is really important. Particularly when you're doing business. Anyway, can you give us a little bit more of your background for some context? Because you're not Russian, but you live in Russia. Anyway, go ahead.
Born and bred in England and educated in England.
Oh, I can hear it now.
before moving to, sorry, now you've said England, I have to be English. Make an effort. But before moving to work in Paris, and I was based in Paris, and basically 1 week in Paris, 1 week always traveling for a real estate developer.
Okay.
Throughout Europe and India and China.
Oh, wow.
And then moved into Russia, which was actually one of the target markets originally.
For the real estate company?
For real estate and research, and set up that activity there, working with companies like HP on data center research, and some of the larger developers and brokers there. Again, always on the research, and again, always trying to sort of understand what's going on. And again, you can't really do research unless you have some kind of handle on the language. And subsequently developed more in the tech field. So I developed some portals, which is how I know Josten, who introduced us.
Wow, I was going to ask you.
Yeah. And
so you're not a technologist by training?
No, not by training, real estate, and I've kind of made myself a technologist. When you're doing research, you bang ever more frequently into different types of technology.
Sure.
And again, a little bit the same kind of mentality to the language. When you get closer to the technology, you can exploit it significantly more than you can if you just have a very surface understanding, whether it's languages, frameworks, whatever it is.
I agree. I mean, I'm not a technologist at all, but excuse me. But I feel like I have a deep understanding of how technology works and also how it makes businesses more productive. And I've been doing this essentially my whole life, but I can't write code.
Yep.
Right. But I presume that if I could, I would be able to understand even more. Like the nuances of how to use it, yeah.
And I think, code comes with an awful lot of choices
Absolutely.
Between the languages and the frameworks that you use. Code also comes with specific utility. So some code is better for different things. Some languages are better for different things.
Sure.
And I think, again, it forces, more than anything, it forces a discipline. Technology is a great discipline.
Absolutely.
Whether it's in design, UX, or, how you're interacting with clients particularly. And again, that comes back because on the e-commerce side of our activities, e-commerce, you had a quote in one of the previous podcasts that e-commerce hasn't been solved.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I fundamentally agree that. Neither do I believe it's ever going to be solved because e-commerce is a form of retail, and retail is basically human psychology. There's reasons why people do what they do. People will even tell you that they have a preference for choice, where they actually have a preference for curated choice and less choice. Mm-hmm. People will tell you that they have a preference maybe to go to a shop to touch and feel something. But in reality, a lot of people, an increasing number of people, just don't like having to schlep to the shop and go backwards and forwards. And again, particularly when a lot of the e-commerce, we operate, I haven't seen it here in Bangkok, but we operate a 100-day money-back guarantee on our mattresses.
Right.
So again, there's just no risk involved for the customer, so it kind of changes. But in as much as I don't think human psychology will ever be solved, I don't think e-commerce will ever be a complete deal. It'll just get better.
Well, this is the whole point, though, right? Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very great introduction into your view on e-commerce.
But it's the point that we're actually always trying to make, and that is, not only is it not solved, it's not going to be solved, but also pointing out the fact that for the people who say it is solved, like, don't worry, this platform's here, it's already done, Amazon's going to be around forever, whatever platform it is.
There's so many things to do.
So many things to do.
And we can see, like, for example, on this podcast, like everybody that we have as a guest is building something that is super interesting, that is new, that is doing like something great for e-commerce, right? And like most of the time we get companies and startups who are undercover, right? And that like not everybody knows.
That's a great comment, by the way, undercover.
Yeah, you see?
Go ahead.
And so, for sure, I completely believe as well that, e-commerce is not solved yet, and there's still so many things that we can do.
But do you remember the conversation we had, what was it, last week with the guy from Algoria?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just completely blew my mind and changed the way I thought about how to design that online experience.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, you've mentioned the word research a bunch of times. What does that mean, though? In other words, you go into a new country or go into a new business. What is the context of that research? Like, what does that really mean? And what are you trying to find out?
Well, we're trying to find out. BlueSleep has been we've just finished our 4th year of trading. And we've been expanding very quickly in Russia. We started with a single model of mattress, and now we have, I think it's 18 individual products in various different sizes. Again, we're not trying to have like 200 different products and so forth. But where we are in the business development, and we very much see ourselves as a marketing company, not necessarily as a product company.
Interesting.
We're looking at exporting the skills and potentially also exporting the products themselves. And so research is, I suppose, primarily meant to try and to minimize the risk of those operations. It would be very easy to come somewhere and just to simply physically start operations, ship in stock, hire people, start your marketing and so forth. But there's so many different ways of getting this wrong. That research is there to really make you understand, to force you to understand what the opportunity really is, what are the levers in an individual market, what are the products that people want, how do they want to buy them, their price sensitivity, or how they even perceive value of your products. So research is very all-encompassing. I think a little bit like your definition of e-commerce, you can never finish research. All you can do is try and reassure yourself before you start something with the research that you're taking the smallest risk possible.
Can I just back up for a second? What did you study in university?
Real estate was first degree, and economics, so mathematical economics was the second one.
Okay. Interesting. Have you always enjoyed this idea of, because research is just like it's a search for some kind of knowledge in some kind of context, right? Do you write well? Do you enjoy writing?
I really enjoy writing. I think, again, I like many things that are forms of discipline. So writing is a discipline for ideas. And again, I think you've got to be very clear on a page because you're communicating from yourself to someone else.
Sure.
The ideas. I also really like, I'm not a designer, but I do like doing UX design. Mm-hmm. I find it, and again, the tools today that exist, and again, I'm old enough to have seen how some of the tools started or even before they were there.
Wait a second, a guy with that color, deep black hair cannot be that old.
Yeah, it's just camera lights. Absolutely. But again, the tools, frankly, for non-specialists today, you mentioned about programming. There's obviously like low code and no code tools for programming.
Yep.
There's a lot of prototyping tools like Figma and things like this, which again allow you to give your vision to your designers and to your developers. And again, I think it's a discipline, and it's a real pleasure to think these things through, and then to see them actually go into construction. And obviously, the ultimate kick is when you get sales out of the original idea.
Yeah,
I feel like I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. It was more like on the research side, like just before we talk about the design and all of that, like because like basically you are currently operating in Russia, like you are selling into Russia, and you are trying to expand into other markets, right? Yep. And what you want to do for this research is like try to understand which market is going to be better for your product, right? And before you start operation, like how you can like. Which market do you target the first, right? That's the goal.
Well, there's a great temptation in research, and again, having done, I don't know, probably 80, 90 different cities, you obviously have a few favorites. And it would be very, very easy to try and fix the research.
To retrofit the research.
So that you could come and live in Bangkok. Right. There's a natural suspicion that if you kind of highly recommend from your research somewhere which is blindingly obviously a nice place to live as well. Right.
I feel like we need to open operations in Maui. Only during surf season.
Bali, the mattress business is huge.
Unbelievable.
And underserved. There's no competition. Nobody.
Go ahead.
No, so again, on what we found, I mean, I've been now here a few weeks, really seeing as much as we can find out about the local market, and it's been very interesting. And obviously, this is how through Yost we met originally, and trying to speak with a few people to really have an understanding beyond just the numbers and the research that's available. And to just the big numbers of average prices or size of market or whatever. Much more important than that is how you operate, and can you operate in a way with which you're comfortable. So, for example, we do a lot of social sales. We do an awful lot of influencer marketing with nearly 600 Russian influencers, prior to the current situation, using Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, for example, on the sales, and really monitoring the efficiency. That's very efficient in Russia at the moment.
What, the social selling?
Yep.
So we've done entire shows on social selling, right?
Yeah.
But it's good to have somebody in the room who actually understands it. We think a lot about it.
Yeah.
But again, it's great to have somebody here who knows this. When you do your research, again, I don't know how old you are, but if you're even close
53.
to I'm 56, right? No, but it's important to make this point, right? I don't feel 56.
Yep, I agree.
And you talk about TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. These are millennial and Gen Z tools,
Yep.
right? But how do you do your research on those as well to make sure that you understand how they work? Now, for sure, you can go out and hire an 18-year-old influencer, but you still have to know how it works, right? Otherwise, you can't just hire some random lady to do this.
We again, in our perception of what we do in our business or whatever, we're very, very marketing driven.
Right.
We're very analytic driven. We study the different tools that we've used, obviously, before starting, and try and see, because there's better and worse ways of using the same tools.
Sure.
And then, again, you say about being older. One of my New Year's resolutions every single year is to pretend that I'm 10 years older than I really am.
Same here.
In mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I always try to tell
younger.
people I'm 72.
Yeah. But
The only problem is I'm getting closer. Anyway, go ahead.
and again, we play around with the same tools. We use the same tools. And again, to try and gain a little bit of the understanding, but frankly spoken, the understanding really comes through the influencers that we're working with and through ultimately the sales. We have this ongoing discussion. We've had it literally from the beginning of the company, whereby someone may not like how the site looks, or may not like how the marketing may look, or some of the production, or some of the content, or whatever. But we've been very, very bottom line driven. There's a lot of companies that have raised a ton of cash, which kind of splash the cash and see what works. We try and cut to the chase a lot quicker. And then what works. When you see some of our creator content, the content on Instagram, for example,
right.
and some of it looks very weird and wonderful, but the fact that it works is the metric that we live by.
Have you raised money?
We've raised in total $2.6 million.
And is that for global money or Russian money? Like, where does that money come from?
It is both.
Okay.
We've had, obviously, right at the start, friends and family, and that has been predominantly international.
Fair enough.
Money coming in. And again, the principal co-founder of BlueSleep, who's the executive chairman, lives in London and has had several successful businesses in Russia, so obviously comes with a big reputation that people have invested into. We have, though, also a reference VC in Russia called Tealtech, which, among others, has the private money of a very successful guy with a network of supermarkets, and very smart supermarkets as well. This isn't the old style. This is very much the modern physical location plus last mile logistic. So again, there's a natural marriage in a little bit of how they operate and how we operate, and they are an investor also in BlueSleep.
Were you referencing mattress companies outside of Russia before you started to do this?
And again, this comes back into
So who are the comps?
Definitely we look at Casper. We look at Emma. I mean, Emma we have a lot of respect for because they've been, like us, they were very early in being P&L driven.
Right.
In a way which some of the American companies weren't and kind of didn't need to be. Or maybe they should have been in retrospect, but again, that's been day one, our mentality, because Russia's not an easy market to raise money into, and it never has been. So there's a lot, again, discipline's one of the big things, whether it's marketing, research, whether it's investment discipline and performance and so forth. So we looked at, there's some, Sleep 8 is a great company out in New York, which has technology in the products as a product differentiator. Another great one in Australia, I think, is Koala, who's done a great job of product extension. Teddy Bear in France is another one, and again, they work differently in as much as they finance part of the machine tools on which their stuff is made to try and have a deal with the production to maintain margins. So there's lots of thinking, again, beyond the product itself in the ways of working. And again, we're very conscious of again, trying to take the inspiration of some of the best practice around the world.
Right.
I think that's super interesting. Like, for example, the example that you gave for Teddy Bear, that they are also financing the machine, right? Like, it's not something that we heard a lot into the e-commerce space. Like, I think that's the first time like a DTC founder of a company tells me that our competitor go finance the machine of our suppliers, right?
Right.
Like, that's really interesting stuff.
Well, I think again, D2C is a little bit of a misnomer because the idea is direct to consumer. The reality is the vast majority of so-called D2C companies actually outsource the production of their goods. So it isn't direct from the producer through to the consumer. They are creating a different form of retail.
Right.
They're digitally native to my mind, is a better description of what it is that they're doing. However, there are some ways of working, and again, we've been very lucky with how we work with our Russian producers. And the closer that you can get to the producer's obviously got to make a decent profit on production.
Otherwise, why, right?
We obviously have also costs, particularly marketing costs, and that we've got to be very conscious of in how we price goods as well. So again, I think the closer that you can get to production without maybe going down the rabbit hole of becoming a producer to try and claim that margin as well, but having a very close understanding of the production and living very close to your producers is really important.
We spent a lot of time at the beginning of this conversation, thankfully, talking about language, culture, and understanding it. And this deep, if you don't have this deep understanding, frankly, if you're not on the ground, like before you set up any business in any country, you should really understand what that country's about or what that city's about. Does the brand name matter as well? Like if you go right back to the beginning of this,
big discussion.
Yeah, but I ask this. It's very important to me, right? Because you can talk colors matter, right? So like BlueSleep.
Yes.
When you come into a new country, do you think should we rebrand? Is there a benefit of having the brand that still exists in our original country, which is Russia, or do we just start from scratch? Because even website design, where people look, where they're clicking, what attracts their attention. Obviously, if you look at like Rakuten, in my mind, it's a complete mess. I can't look at it, all the flashing buttons, all that stuff, but Japanese people love it. And every website in Japan looks kind of like that in the e-commerce space.
And by the way, Rakuten in France is completely different.
But that's my point.
It's a completely different website.
But it's also still called Rakuten.
Yeah, it's the same brand.
But if you know what Rakuten means,
What does it mean?
well, Raku just means easy or happy, and ten means store.
Okay.
So it has a meaning, right?
Okay.
It's easy store, easy to shop kind of thing, right? But it doesn't mean anything in French.
No, it doesn't mean.
Right? And even I think the car that was made in Yugoslavia, which was called the Yugo, someone told me once in Spanish it means like doesn't go.
Okay.
It's kind of thing. Like, so you have to be careful about this. Do you consider different brand names when you move into different countries?
We consider. I think blue, as you say, usually has a positive connotation for sleep. Again, we would change it if we found that there was a bad connotation of that. I mean, obviously, in a new market, it isn't a known brand. We're not allergic to changing that. But again, we had a massive discussion originally around whether or not
the name.
Whether it should be in Russian, whether it should be in English. I mean, we have a kind of model whereby a little bit sort of, I suppose, the Apple model. We design and we specify all our products in England. And so we have the best technologists who make this stuff, and they're actually produced in Russia. So again, in terms of the name, there is a connotation of us being a British. British comes with a like Italian or French or whatever.
Comes with a thing,
has a thing, exactly.
Yeah, but do you consider redesigning the whole website too? Like, I guess the overall question is, based on the research that you do and just the way you think about new markets, entering new markets, the levers, the how, the price sensitivity, all these things. Will you redesign the website from scratch? The point I'm trying to make is that localization is not just changing the language,
Yep.
So how do you perceive that?
It will be a different website here. We won't try and sort of slot in local content on the structure that we've got.
Right.
Part of that, to be honest with you, we're not a marketplace. So if we were a marketplace, we might have a slightly different perception because there's a much greater depth and breadth in marketplace websites than there is in D2C one. So our site, frankly spoken, is a very light site on the sort of front end side. The main technical part of it is an integration into the sales CRM. when accounting CRM. That's the main technical part of it. Within the front end, the only thing that generates more pages is how much testing we do on landing pages.
Okay.
So, for example, we will have one product with 40 different versions of the landing page.
Really?
Really to try and understand which works best. There's a lot of process that goes into that. And again, I would to answer the question. I think I think that we would have a lot more flexibility in working how we work if we were to construct from zero a site for Thailand and Southeast Asia.
What happens on the back end or undercover, no pun intended, when you're doing the designing of the landing page? Mm-hmm. This is so interesting for me. If there are 40 landing pages for the same product, what are you trying to test? And is this another one of these things that because it's about human psychology, it's never fixed, right? It's just constantly changing?
Yep.
But what's the goal there with all these different landing pages, and how do you design them?
You start between structures and, I suppose, hypotheses. So you sort of say, if this changes, how would you expect to improve what it is that you've got? So, of course, when we launch with a single landing page for different products. And then you're changing whether it's the structure of the pages, the content of the pages, both in terms of the images and the copywriting.
Right.
And a little bit the process of how quickly you go to basket and how you support the basket. Again, this also needs to tie in, and there's a lot of maths behind this as well. We work with a fabulous company in Moscow called Retentioneering, which are physicists out of the best university. But there's a lot of thought that goes into the process of optimizing, not only between on the website itself, but in the marketing tools that we use and the level at which we market. So you have an initial brand awareness at the top of the funnel.
Right.
You have kind of like a vanilla reassurance in the middle of the funnel, just to take people to the next step. And then you have a conversion tie-in, just the last click to help people make that decision. And again, not forgetting that we're offering 100-day money-back guarantee. It's just literally to get them into and through and out the funnel as efficiently as possible. So
when I was a student in college, I was introduced to two brands that I'll never forget. LL Bean. I don't know if you've heard of LL Bean.
Nope.
They make, so their super famous product was these rain boots.
Okay.
Completely waterproof. And then someone that copied them was a business called Land's End. And Land's End basically took all LL Bean's products at some level and said, we're going to make them more appropriate for college students. Okay. But LL Bean's thing was that you could return the product at any time for any reason, no questions asked. 10 years later, 20 years later, it didn't matter. I want you to explain why this return policy, like how it leads to trust, right? Because a mattress as well, you can't return 15 years later because by definition you've slept on it, right? But 100 days, it's really this idea, I think, of, oh, you know what? I thought at the beginning that my back was going to hurt or that my legs were, but now that I've used it for 3 months, actually it feels a lot better kind of thing, right?
It is psychology. And again, not forgetting, the digital native versus the physical store.
Right, so I never lied down on it to test it, yeah?
So we did start the company with a couple of physical stands in shopping centers.
Really?
Again, more a psychology point that we're confident that if you go and have a look at them, you'll be happy with them anyway.
Right.
It was more in that sense than generating a lot of sales through the stands themselves. And we have, in the past, right at the start, worked with a few retailers as well, but we're already a reseller. So, again, it sort of becomes complicated if you've got a production margin, a reseller margin, and a retail margin.
Of course.
And plus the fact we have, particularly to the mattresses, it's in terms of mattress products, it's actually not complicated to make 90% plus of your customers happy with the product. There is such a thing as a universal mattress. And you can have a universal mattress with springs or without springs, with this foam or that foam or whatever. The proof is really in the pudding. We get about 4% of returns, of which half anyway are people who've ordered the wrong size, which I hate. But,
wait, why do you hate that so much?
No, but it's like measure it.
It's like I don't know how big my own bedroom is.
Well, why I hate it? The mattresses are delivered in a box. They're compressed,
right? So it's in a smaller box,
and rolled.
Yeah.
So you can't put it back in the box.
Right. So someone, I got it.
So again, I don't mind if someone fundamentally doesn't like it, which is again very unlikely to happen.
Right. The wrong size.
But to order the wrong size is a bit of a pain.
But that's a very, very low return rate.
Yep.
That's so small.
Well, the products, I mean, again, not just in form of advertising, but I mean, to be honest, it's more complicated trying to deliver universal pillows than it is to deliver universal mattresses, because the pillows is much more a question of preference and size, and firmness, and so forth. So again, we're kind of playing to a home advantage on this one. And frankly spoken, the mattresses are very, very good mattresses.
Right.
There's no two way. I mean, I've slept for years on our bestseller, which is a hybrid, which is in US dollars is $670 for the 160-200 size, and now I sleep on there's a Duo which has 2 times more spring. It's micro spring, so it has 4,000 micro springs inside it.
Okay,
which is 1,100, and genuinely love the mattresses.
Why do you consider yourselves? Because you've said this again a bunch of different times, and it has to be purposeful. Why do we think of ourselves as a marketing company and not as a product company?
Yeah, well, this, and again, it kind of knocks into a little bit of the conversation also into D2C platforms and stuff like this.
Yep, go ahead.
But right at the start, when the principal co-founder, Mark Hamelford, came up with the idea, and we kind of did a ton of research, meeting people in London, including people who'd done this business. And it was one of the first and definitely the best piece of advice that we were given. You're not mattress guys. You can buy that. You can buy specialists, and we work with some of the best people in specifying things. You need to be a marketing company. And again, having built and founded a couple of other online platforms, I was sort of very conscious of the different forms of online marketing, the different channels and so forth. And that discipline that we've had has served us extremely well. And again, when you look at some of the companies you mentioned on the previous podcast, like Thrasio, they consider that what they're bringing to product founder D2C companies is these online marketing and analytic skills and branding skills.
Right.
And that is completely true.
So what's your view on Thrasio and e-commerce aggregation?
Can I just jump in just before we go there? Just before we go there,
Okay,
I just want to ask you something.
Let me go. Please let me go there.
I just want to ask you something just based on what you just said, because basically what you say is when you started this company, you didn't really started that because people needed mattress. Because everybody already have mattress, right? So it's not something completely new, and that's not something So do you mean that where you were doing something new was on the marketing side, because people were not selling mattress this way, people were not advertising marketing this way, and this is where you saw a gap?
Well, part of the reason why Mark in London reached out anyway was the fact that he really suffered from bad sleep. And again, it doesn't matter what money you spend on a mattress. Sometimes if it's just not you, it's not you. And he kind of banged into this as being the model. And then the natural question was, does this exist in Russia? No. Okay. Could it work? Let us do some research. And there wasn't anyone selling mattresses in boxes in this way. There wasn't without the sort of retail support. So that's how we set up. But again, we set up very much from day one with both a focus on profit and loss, so because again, we didn't have $100 million to blast or whatever. And obviously you have to be respectful of your investors. And the second thing was setting up with this vision of really being a marketing driven company.
Let's go back to Thrasio.
Yeah. So what's your thought on Thrasio?
But not necessarily Thrasio per se, but just this idea of aggregation and again, if you listen to the episode with Opontia, the gentleman that runs that company said, we pay 4 times sales. We think it's worth 11 times sales.
Yes, exactly. 15, I think he said.
15. Let's give it 15. I'm happy. It's almost 4 times as much. But in my mind, one of the questions that I always have is, as an online marketing company or an e-commerce participant, if you know you're being purchased for 4 times sales, but it's actually worth 15 times, and if you feel like you have a specialty in marketing, that you're doing something different than somebody else, one, why would you sell at 4 times sales, first of all? And second of all, if you did make enough money to leave and go start something else, wouldn't you take your expertise in the marketing with you and then what happens to that brand? Because you care. In other words, you said this. What's his name? Mark Hammerford?
Yes, the founder. Yeah. Very good.
Didn't even write it down. But you said it came out of his idea that his back was hurt when he was sleeping. So it was real.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right, he was looking around for a business to do, but it wasn't like, my feet hurt, I need to replicate Dr. Scholl's. He was like, hey, wait a second, I do business in Russia already, and this doesn't exist, and I have this problem. Let me fix it.
Exactly
right?
that.
But I think this is true for most e-commerce people. Right? They operate in a business where they want that product or love that product or feel that product, and they apply their marketing skills or whatever skills they have to it. Why would they sell?
Yeah. Well, we are working on this idea in Russia. I mean, in the previous podcast, Philip Johnston, I think it was, from Apontia, said that it isn't being done. It isn't being done. Our CEO in BlueSleep, Gosha Semenov, has been really working on this for at least the last 6 to 9 months.
The aggregation thing or the BlueSleep thing?
Within Russia. I think to answer your question, I think a lot of the product people definitely feel a ceiling in a way which maybe the marketing people don't. So they have a ceiling in terms of what their skills can translate into online sales.
Okay.
They do have an alternative. The alternative is hiring all of those skills. You know,
just like you said, right?
Absolutely.
In other words, you're not mattress guys, you're marketing guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there is that alternative. I think for quite a lot of these people, though, they've got to, for the sake of argument, $2 to $5 million in sales.
Right.
It's probably taken them 6, 7, 8 years or whatever
to get there.
A lot of hard work.
Sure.
A lot of your life. And there is definitely a temptation of allowing someone else to share the load with you, and again with an upside. And taking at the same time, maybe taking some cash out. And again, for I think a lot of these people, particularly in the States, this is life-changing cash. They're taking out a few $1 million to buy a house, to pay for their children's education. There's quite a few things that are really important there. Could they go a lot further? Quite possibly. But do they want to double up on the pain and the suffering a little bit of what they've already experienced? And maybe, I like the model. I like the Thrasio model. I like, particularly in France, there's branded, which is another evolution of the thing. There's a few more evolutions now happening I've seen in India. Mensa, I think, is one of the companies there. And again, back to the research, we try and track all this stuff.
Right.
And what we've seen is about $7 billion raised into this model.
Yes.
Up until January, February, when we were sort of doing presentations on this.
Well, and about $2 billion of it raised by Thrasio.
3.4, I think.
Something like that, yeah. So almost half of it.
Oh, no, absolutely. And again, I can kind of see there's a logical mental, you come from finance, so you understand how arbitrage works. And these are
arbitrage.
These are pretty big arbitrages.
Our businesses, yeah.
I think, to be quite honest with you, I think the model is likely to move to having more, because it comes, as you say, like founders leaving. I think there's going to have to be more of an upside with the founders.
So now you're talking
going forward.
4 times sales into 8 times sales, maybe.
No, not necessarily. I think the model needs to be kind of something along the lines of cash out at the start, but a bigger share in the
going forward.
Going forward, absolutely.
So you bring up this great word, and I didn't expect to have this conversation with you, but you kind of just developed this way. I want to get back to sleeping in a second. As a matter of fact, I'd love to take a nap, to be fair.
Send you a mattress.
We'll talk about that later. But in any market where an arbitrage exists and where information flows freely, what happens to that arb?
Exactly.
It closes.
Yep.
And I think you can raise $3 billion, $7 billion, but I'm on record, and I'll say it again.
Yep.
I think there's going to be a lot of carnage in that business. There really is, because there's no moat to entry.
Yep.
There's no barrier to entry. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, again, there is definitely a question of scale. When you get to a certain scale on the markets, whether you're going through SPACs or any other kind of forms of investment, whatever, the scale does reach other types of investor. It's a simple fact, for example, even on the stock exchange, for as long as anyone remembers, you get into the S&P 500, you get into the FTSE 100, there are investors who only feed in that pond specifically.
Well, that have to feed in that pond.
That have to feed in that pond specifically.
Go ahead.
So in putting these companies together, there's definitely a question of how far the individual brands can go within those aggregators, because what you don't want to end up with is 100 companies that have a natural ceiling
of $5 million,
5 million or 10 million, 20 or
Right.
30. You kind of want to believe that you can take each of those companies, basically, I'd say safely past $300, $400, $500 million.
Right.
Then
But that argues for the fact, and it's just me, right? But
Yeah.
that argues for the fact that you don't need $3.5 billion to find those businesses,
Yep.
because there aren't enough of them in which to invest
Yep.
to justify all the money that you're raising.
And I think
That's what I think.
And there's this balance. And I mean, this is kind of true coming back, to Southeast Asia, because obviously the dominance of the marketplace is here.
Right.
You've got a dominance of Shopify and Amazon.
In the US, but here it's
US.
like
No. I mean, in Thrasio's market. Sorry.
Yes.
Which again on pretty heavy fees. So not only are you taking a leap of faith in saying applying marketing skills can grow those businesses, that they have that kind of possibility, you're taking a leap of faith as well that you can actually kind of D2C those companies, because
Right.
you need to take this a larger proportion of the sales from the marketplaces to being direct online as well. So there's a lot of leaps of faith in.
So this is one of my other great, and I think I asked Philip this as well, and I ask other people that are doing the same business model. Wouldn't it make sense if you're aggregating all these great brands, then to recreate Amazon, but in a way that's you understand my point though, right?
Yeah.
Because part of the problem on Amazon is the same problem that the chief revenue officer at Lazada explained to me. It doesn't matter. We have 2 million products.
Yeah.
But discovery is a big problem.
Discovery is the biggest. I mean, to me, and again, coming a little bit from a real estate background, it's very, very difficult to discover, even online. You've got non-organic results. You haven't got the whole of the market online, et cetera. E-commerce tends to have exactly the opposite. It has too much. So
way too much. Like on Fifth Avenue, there's only Fifth Avenue.
Yeah. And again, you go into Amazon. I love Amazon. I've been one of the oldest clients in the UK when I was a student there, et cetera. I was probably client number 2 or 3 or something.
I was client number 1 in Japan, I think. But anyway, go ahead.
Buying books and so forth. And again, even the algorithms are now struggling to keep up with your very simple buying habits.
Right.
Given, I mean, I only ever buy books. I mean, it's not. I'm not
they should have you figured out.
They should have me, and I buy books 2 times a year when I go back to the UK. They should really have me figured out. But because, I mean, it's just an impossible task. However, I mean, Amazon has ridiculous amounts of brains, not only in the robotics, but in the in the warehouses, but in logistics, but also in the AI. But there's if the bots and the AI can't sort out Amazon out, what chance do the poor humans stand? And this is the same on, and again, that's having a single or 2 marketplaces. When you come into whether Russia has 5 very strong, very well financed marketplaces. Here, obviously, you have a number, Lazada, Shopee, etc. Of the marketplaces. So you're still even expecting the clients to go between marketplaces. And again, to come back on the thing, I 100% agree that these companies like Thrasio or whatever have a natural job to launch curated marketplaces.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Agree.
Yeah, I think so. I talk about this all the time. Can we get back to this idea of just being a marketing company?
Sure.
Because it begs the question of, if you create this incredible expertise in marketing, when does it stop being only mattresses?
Well, this is again...
Because you do research.
Yes, exactly.
So you can see gaps, yeah?
Yeah. So again, we started right at the start. We had in our mind a little bit like Emma. We love the discipline that Emma has, and they haven't drifted into a million other things. German-based mattress and sleep company, and I think to date they have 2, maybe 3 mattress models. They have 2 pillow models. So they've really now they trade in multiple markets. So again, maybe in some of the markets are slightly different, but. When I've looked at some of the markets, they've expanded some of the D2C companies, they've expanded way too quickly from their core. And they've kind of lost a little bit of who they are.
Sure.
Nonetheless, I completed actually last year in the sleep sphere and also in general D2C, a research of, I don't know how many thousand companies, whatever. And one of the big themes was product extension. But within the product extension, it was really the logic of product extension. I mean, even if you're, I'm trying to remember, what's the cycling company with the screens?
Peloton,
thank you. So Peloton's the cycling company with the screens. I couldn't remember the damn name.
It's like I couldn't remember Philip's name, so touche.
Then they went into the running machines, and now they do weights or whatever like this.
Right.
And again, you can kind of buy the story, home gym, home training or whatever.
Right.
When they kind of go into clothes maybe more, or shoes maybe more, or something, when they're banging up against the Nikes or the Adidases of the world or whatever, there is a natural question of how far is too far. We're losing the purity.
So I guess my question wasn't about extending the brand of BlueSleep. It was saying we have an expertise
into different sector verticals.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
Let's just start you know what I mean? Like we'll call it like, I don't know, like green tripods.
Yep.
Whatever you want to, just because I'm looking at a tripod because it's not blue kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yep.
Where you can then look around the market and say there's tripods are underserved.
Yep.
Green's a great color. And we understand how to market things. We're not going to we're not tripod guys.
Mm-hmm.
But we understand the marketing side of this, and we also understand supply chain, right? Because you have to understand how you get it from. You said earlier, like I'll give you a mattress, but it may take some time.
Yeah.
Soon enough, it won't take that much time, and I'll definitely
4
be
hours
buying
in Moscow.
Yeah, but here,
Not in Moscow,
a little further away.
Yeah.
But once you set up shop, I'm customer one.
Yeah. Okay.
I need a new mattress. But my point is that once you figure that out, do you think about then where you can apply these marketing skills to completely different products under a different brand? Is what I'm saying.
Exactly. That was the original idea that Gosha was working on when he kind of was looking, do we take those skills and start from zero in different verticals?
Right.
Or is it better and faster and more efficient to take those skills and to look at other verticals in existing companies, which comes back to the aggregator model. So, of course, we've looked.
Interesting.
And again,
which means what, like buying other mattress companies or buying like the sheet making company or the bedding company?
Even further, cosmetics, food. A lot of the skills, we kind of ask the question 180 degrees the other way around. We ask the question, where do our skills have value?
Right.
The second question that we ask is, where are the margins sufficient for D2C operations at relatively low scale?
Right.
So, rather than assuming that you're going to sell however many thousand of one product or whatever, you kind of need traction and revenue and EBITDA and performance traction at a lower level, just to sort of get going, to really then have the scale to be able to ramp up the scale. So we've looked, again, cosmetics is one, food is another. Some of the specialist foods, like health snack foods.
Like spirulina or something.
We've looked at, I put my personal favorite, there's a fabulous company in Russia called 365 Detox, which is kind of healthy snack food. So they kind of do a very nice version of Snickers bar without the guilt that comes with Snickers bar. So
I wonder why they call it 365.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, for example.
No.
And, so we've referenced a lot of what goes on outside and some of the companies that the aggregators have been buying.
Yeah.
So we can see where they think that these skills are most applicable.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you decided?
And we translate back into Russia. And again, there's a lot of very smart people in Russia with D2C.
Absolutely.
The market, e-commerce, even before COVID, had a great momentum behind it.
Did it?
COVID really kicked and accelerated, even if we had a very short lockdown. The market continues to grow. It's different, but it continues to grow pretty strongly. But again, most of those D2C founders are product people.
Right.
And so we can see successful, very nice companies. We can see the ceilings that they've had and so forth. And again, there is a natural thing. There isn't an infinite pool like you discussed with Philip. There's not an infinite pool in the Middle East. There's certainly not an infinite pool in Russia either.
What's the population in Russia?
144 million.
Okay. That's a good size, actually.
It's very good, and contrary to what people think, because they see on a map and they see the world's biggest country by landmass.
Yeah.
The reality is that the vast majority of people live in about 15% of the country.
Sure, it's like Australia, right? I mean, nobody lives in the middle part of that country because they die, but still.
So you've even got on the European side, you've got, I think it's 118 million of the 144 live on the European side. And that is within 2.5 hours flight of Moscow.
Right.
So, and again, there have been e-commerce has evolved over quite a long time in Russia. There's a great logic to e-commerce in Russia, particularly, but the biggest problems to have been solved have been the online payments and not doing cash on delivery, for example.
Why is that a problem? In Russia specifically?
Well, specifically, there have been trust issues right at the start, which has meant that people have preferred cash on delivery.
COD. Yeah.
We've gone from 15% prepayment through to 90% plus prepayment now for delivery of goods.
Which means they trust you.
Yeah, we have very little. We
Right.
have very little now cash on delivery, which is good. But again, and payment into the other cities as well, because obviously as soon as you gain traction in Moscow. Moscow is, roughly speaking, 10% of the population of Russia, but it's about 20 to 23% of the GDP.
Yeah.
So the primary activities there, but then very quickly you have to go to St. Petersburg and into the other bigger cities, and then logistics. And logistics, again, have been very difficult because some of the distances have been extreme, particularly to the Far East, to Vladivostok, Khabarovsk.
Right. Vladivostok's all the way on the East Coast.
7 days by train.
Yeah, it's down there.
It's
Closer to Japan than it is to Moscow.
Oh, it's much closer to Japan than you can see Japan, I think.
Yeah,
you can't see Moscow. And then the logistics have been solved. We've got great logistics now in most of the big cities. And there's 82% urbanization. I think it's like 53% in Thailand. So we've got a lot of urban because of the Soviet
highly
structure.
concentrated. Yeah.
So
are you? Did I miss this? Did you just run past this really fast? But are you actually considering building your own aggregator?
Yep.
Inside of Russia.
Yes.
So you're completely disagreeing with me on this, but maybe maybe in a different way, though, right?
Way.
Yeah, because what you're basically saying is, first of all, we want to be very efficient with our capital use.
Yes.
Second of all, we want to take the expertise that we have, not sell to somebody else, but be very picky's the wrong word, but self-curate, so that we look around and go, wait a second, Martin's running a really great business in the cosmetic space. There are 15 cosmetics businesses. This is the best one. Mm-hmm. We're going to fold this into our brand, and maybe it's not called BlueSleep. It's called,
keep the brand.
Inscoe, whatever it's called, incorporated.
It's got an existing brand.
Yeah, whatever it is, and keep the brand there because it works, and then aggregate all those, and then create your own marketplace.
Yes.
So this idea I love.
Yep.
And I'm on record as saying that too, because it's got to be because it's got to be curated. But I don't think it makes me a genius.
No, but I think curation is the big thing. Again,
huge.
Again, this is the whole thing of D2C. If you want to go to a mattress shop and see 200 different models of mattresses,
not interested,
and blow your mind,
not interested.
Be my guest. If you want somebody to try to do that work for you and really try to narrow that down between technologies and price ranges and stuff like that, that's what we do. We curate the products very, very. We look at 100 things to choose one product. So it is curated products, and the same is true of a lot of the D2C companies as well.
But this is why I buy my computers from Apple.
Yep.
Laptops.
Same thing.
Desktops. Mobile devices. Mm-hmm. That's it. I know what I want. Now, inside the laptop, there are only like a few: the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and I think you're done.
Yep.
And then the desktop, it's the Mac Pro and the Mac Mini kind of thing.
Yeah, Apple,
it's so easy.
Well, Apple's the world's largest company because of discipline. Again,
exactly.
It always comes back to discipline.
Always. But this is my point: is that when Steve Jobs came back,
no printers,
no nothing. We're not doing that. He drew the quadrant. We talked about this on last week or 2 weeks ago's episode. I can't remember. It's just like, here are the pro models. Here are the consumer models. Yep. They all fit on a table. What do you want? Yep. We've done the curation for you. I go to Dell and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Yep. I have no idea what to do. Anyway,
then you get. I think with a lot of when you get choice, you also get a lot of buyer's remorse, and this comes back. This comes back into the 100 days money back guarantee. Quite famously in the UK, one of the companies did the same thing and offered the same product, hard and soft. Okay, so of course they massively increase their returns because people go, this isn't bad, but let's try the other one.
Right.
So again, there has to be curation, and again, you want a Pro Mac, you have a Pro Mac. You want an Air, you get an Air.
Right.
And you know what you're getting.
And I know what I'm doing with it too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
He won't let me buy any of this stuff, by the way. He's in charge of finance.
Too much, that's why.
He's in charge of finance.
The prices are great in Thailand, by the way.
They're okay.
I just bought a new phone.
You bought a phone?
Yeah.
What did you get?
13 mini.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
I was thinking about buying
it reminds me of my favorite of the phones was the 5S.
Yeah, the 5S,
and
by
it's just
far.
Beautiful format.
Well, look at mine. I have the SE.
Yeah.
I have the SE. I'm thinking about getting the 13 Pro Max, but again...
Well, again, it's just neatly in your pocket, nice and small.
You're a front pocket guy.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I don't understand. Yeah. I love the curated marketplace model.
Yeah.
With the phone in the front pocket, I just don't understand. Anything else, Martin?
Yeah, I wonder like going back to e-commerce.
Yep.
After we talked about
We were talking about e-commerce.
I'm wondering, like, why do you think there is still no aggregators in Russia? Because there's all over the world, and Russia is a big market and a big country. So why not in Russia yet?
I think a few different things. So Philip touched upon one, which was the availability of debt. Debt is an important part in the market,
right.
and debt obviously has been more difficult to get. We have credit lines in Russia, but has been definitely more difficult to achieve, and is more expensive than in the West. You mentioned sort of like why not use it if it's zero cost?
Yeah,
it isn't zero cost in Russia,
right?
So that is something to do. Russia, in terms of cycle, has been a couple of years. I hate saying in things behind, because it tends to
just different. Let's just different.
It's different, and it tends to sort of see something and go faster with it. You know, adopt it. Maybe go see something elsewhere, but take it and go run with that faster. So, in terms of critical mass, it's where the market is today, not really where it was 12 or 24 months ago.
Right.
I think Russia. And again, Philip was sort of saying in terms of local execution in Saudi Arabia, I completely agree with the local execution point, and I don't dismiss either the local execution in America, because us trying to go to America to do something doesn't bring natural advantage.
Right.
Whereas I think having on the ground, and again, our founders come. I've had many businesses. Our different founders have had many businesses equally. So there's a local execution definitely advantage to do it. And I think, and again, in terms of the scale, I mean, it really is taking off. I think there's outstanding questions of where the marketplaces go to.
Right.
That is a big question in Russia, because again, 5 very well financed, one owned by Alibaba, sounds familiar, one owned by the biggest bank, one owned by basically owned by the biggest telecom company. So there's 5 big marketplaces there.
Yeah, I think most of them are going to die, because I think that look, I've been through this before, right? And I think that there are analogies offline to online. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, we literally went to a butcher shop. There was a bakery in my town. There was a fish shop.
Yep.
And then there were supermarkets. And I think we're coming all the way back around. We're like, I just want to go to the place where there's the best fish.
Yep.
Right? I don't want to go into a supermarket and have to look at the fish that everyone's picked over on their way to going to, buy T-shirts.
Well, I think, again, it comes back down to this selection. So I think, frankly spoken, 80-90% of the stuff that you buy, you don't need to go and see and poke.
Yeah, completely agreed.
You need to poke your fish.
Maybe, though.
Yeah.
Maybe. But unless it's super high-quality salmon, and you know what you're going to get, I'll order it constantly.
I love food markets. The best one's Autocore.
Oh, sure.
No, but what I'm saying is, your electronics, you've kind of done the research online. You've listened to YouTube and the unboxings and everything. You've kind of made your mind up. You frankly don't need to go to the shop.
I go to the Apple store for fun. I don't go to it for the product.
Dream.
I know it there. I just come like, wow, that's cool.
And see how heavy.
Yeah, it would look great in my house kind of thing.
No.
But I don't go there to buy.
Yeah. So I think it frees up a lot of your time. And then that time, the 100% that you were dividing between all these different retail things, most of those experiences weren't great retail experiences.
Right.
Humans are nonetheless a social animal. So online has been a better way to buy for at least 10 years in most places. The fact that shopping centers are so amazing is because human psychology, humans are
want
animals.
To go. They want to go.
We still want to go. But if a lot of what you're collecting, your waters, your standard, your cleaning material, buy it online. It's dead easy. Then it frees up. And you want to go clothes shopping, you've got much more time to go clothes shopping, or much more time to go food shopping.
I got it.
Perfect. I'm done with my questions. I finished.
Good, because I need to go buy things.
Some salmon, apparently.
Why not?
I took the debit card.
You took the debit card. Unbelievable.
And I think just before we end, when again where we are, I mean, we've done a lot of research. We really like Thailand as a potential market.
It's a great market.
We'd love to do Thailand plus probably a Malaysia plus in Indonesia, and have a real mass through Southeast Asia. That would be a real pleasure to work on. And just the last thing, where the numbers that we've seen, the conversations that we've had have really convinced us of the market and how the market works. I mean, different culture, different language, obviously, but not fundamentally different to how we can operate. And we want to find someone here that's motivated to run that idea with us. I mean, that's how we sort of set up in Moscow and start shipping in product and do the first. We do proof of concept, we achieve the marketing efficiencies, and then scale.
Got it.
It's not a very complicated model.
Got it. Awesome.
So there's the advert.
There's the advert. I didn't feel like I was being advertised to, which is why it's great marketing.
There we go.
Stephen Inscoe, a co-founder and the chief information officer of BlueSleep. in the studio at Seven Peaks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.